This is the beginning of the marching bear group, this elongated compound mound, although I can't see any apparent distinct conical mounds. This is the map view, but I'm going to turn it upside down because we're in the upper left-hand corner of that series of greens. Okay, now the first one to the left of the trail is where we're at right now. So we'll walk up past another, and then at the juncture of it and a bear is a bear that goes off to the left. That's where we started, down at the end of that compound mound. Excuse the quick pan. Here we are at that second one in the same row. Now notice that both of those have climbed up this ridge line to that point up there. Off to the left, our first bear, which should be pointing off to the left, and to the right, the other bear continuing down the line of the mounds will follow. This is the end of the second compound mound, and I'm now at the juncture of that compound mound and these two bears we spoke of. And this is pretty much the top of this ridge, if you will. And then off of this high point are additional mounds, of course. They go down, they dip a bit down there, and then it looks like it goes up to the left. And now I'm at this intersection, same place I was, just a little bit farther forward of those mounds. I'll pan around because it starts to get pretty complex. We're going to focus on this area to the left of the intersection. And that's this area that forms like a square. We're going to be dealing with the lower left side of the square and the left side of the square. One of the difficulties when an amateur modern sleuth like me tries to imagine why things were done, one of the problems is that we're obsessed with the idea that if a project, even major, starts, it should be done in a year or so, if not months. But here we're looking at something that may have taken place over 1,000 years, 600, totally different eras of humans and their thoughts. So without a knowledgeable, if that's possible, archaeologist, we're not able to tell what the sequence of creation of these was, to even give us a hint as to how that layout may have some overall philosophical, if you will, integrity. We don't know. I'm not sure the archaeologists know. Above the bear, and looking to our left, is his haunch, rear, and here the head. Now, one of the reasons archaeologists don't know much about all of this is because I think after 1962, when whatever the name of the Congressional Act was, scientists are prevented from doing any excavation in these mounds. To me, that's intellectually absurd and dishonest and hypocritical on all sides. If the Native Americans do not allow intelligent, controlled, limited excavation, which respects what's found and returns what's found after it's been analyzed, how can they possibly believe that in a modern world their conjectures as to what these mounds mean has any merit, if it's only based on their myth and their interpretations as modern men of what they say their myths are? Another bear. Walk down and explore that area further. Right down through those three clumps of trees right ahead of us should be another bird, swallow-like bird. I'm standing at the tip of the left wing of this bird, its torso, directly ahead of us and going off to the right at a 90 degree from the wing, and then the other wing course arching back to the right beyond it. So the head off here to the left, which looks like it may have disappeared over time. I'm going to pan this so we can see the slight variations that have occurred in what was probably originally the profile. For example, it dips right here. Was it originally designed to do that? The head, which is apparently right there, is almost indistinct, but you can barely make it out, I think, and that shadow may be helping to add to the illusion of the head. But this is a pretty substantial downhill slope, suggesting that there could be a considerable amount of slippage of soil over time. Looking at that bird right in the lower left-hand corner, beneath the shadow of my lens, to the right of that bird you'll see two bears. These are those two bears. First one. And then the second one there. Knowing which of these was built first, it isn't hard to imagine over time them progressively selecting additional sites with additional strategies for their bears. Straight ahead of us is a pretty much of a straight line, and there are three bears in a row. And those three bears are right to the right of the M in the upside down marching word. So not knowing which of these was built first, once one had been built and the progression began of future construction, it isn't hard to imagine them having different strategies as they looked at the land for adding more of their effigies. These three bears are interesting because, as you can see from their almost perfect alignment, they represented a very cohesive concept at some point in time for their development. In other words, after the first one was built, my guess is, or even before, that they had a hint that future ones might go in a straight line. I don't know if we can see it here, but winding up to the left are more mounds that we'll be following, all the way up through those trees. We'll go there now. I'm standing on the head of those three bears uphill, head right to my right. This is the shoulder, front shoulder of the top of the three bears, but you can see again how these shoulders appear to line up, as do the torsos, all the way down the hill. Something else to notice is that while the mowing of the lawn around the mounds and the limited coiffing, if you will, of the vegetation on top of the mounds is how the force or the government delineates the shape of these effigies for us. But wouldn't you imagine that each year that they came back, the ancient ones either denuded these figures of all vegetation or ensured that some special landscaping treatment was given to each of them? Could each of them have had different landscaping to delineate something? I don't know, just guessing. Walking away from our three bears, continuing uphill to the next two bears ahead of us, and then followed by two birds. This is the top of these next two bears, and what's occurred to me is I sense that this bear in particular is considerably larger than the other bears that we've seen, except for maybe the great bear in the north unit yesterday. What I also notice is the alignment of these bears is this way, whereas the alignment of those other three bears is at that angle there. Yet, this looks like the ridge that the original three were on continues straight up through here. So why did they shift direction? Was it the pragmatic has too many big trees in the way? Or something else? It's a considerable distance now between these last two bears and the birds that we're going to see. Were they in totally different time eras? So at this point, I've come over the lip of this hill that we were climbing up with nothing on it until you drop off of it. And here we have our two birds, and we'll try and get a better look at this.